you're in a better place. So let me just describe. You already understand the basics of the mission of outreach to the police and military, correct? Okay. The goal there is not to get them to join Oath Keepers. If they want to, that's fine. The goal there is to remind them of their oath. And the 10 Orders declaration that we have is not our oath. The oath is the oath we all swore to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. It's the whole Constitution. It's the whole of the Bill of Rights, everything, not just the 10 Orders. That's why earlier I said, hey, even beyond the 10 Orders, if orders are given, there can be plenty of other orders. We have some people that write in and say, well, why come you don't talk about forced vaccinations? Why come you don't talk about posse comitatus? Or why don't you talk about torture? Or all kinds of other issues that they bring up. Well, look, the oath is not to the 10 Orders, it's to the entire Constitution. So, but our Declaration of 10 Orders is meant to do two things. One, it serves as a teaching tool to show them these are actually, if you look at the 10 Orders, what they really are is a reflection of our own history. It's no accident that most of what you read there is reflected in our own Bill of Rights, which was only the founders' lessons learned from their own history and experience. They suffered under those abuses, denial of jury trial, searches without warrant, being spirited away overseas, being forced to testify against yourself, soldiers being housed inside of their homes without the consent of their legislatures, on and on and on. Look through everything in the first 10 amendments of the Constitution, which are our Bill of Rights, and you will see there reflected their experience. The Declaration of 10 Orders is simply acknowledging that history and saying, yes, this is the pattern that abusive regimes go through. Invariably, they do the same things over and over again. They tend to try to constrain the people and limit their ability to speak to each other and their ability to fight back, and they amplify their own powers, and they try to tear down any restraints that are put in place in the laws against them doing whatever they want. So it's a common pattern. At the time of the Founding Fathers, when they wanted to enforce the Stamp Act and other acts that they'd passed in Parliament, they chafed at having to have jury trials. They couldn't possibly convict someone like Hancock, who was a notorious smuggler. They couldn't convict him of smuggling with a jury of his own peers, could they? So they had to spirit someone like that across the seas back to England for trial, or trial in a maritime court, in a court of admiralty, rather than a jury trial. So every government does these things. All we're recognizing in the 10 Orders is the history of abusive governments through time, reflected largely in our own history, and then adding on our knowledge of what happened in the 20th century, in Soviet Russia, in Nazi Germany, with the concentration camps. All of this knowledge is just reflected there. These are the things that are most likely to lead to another American Revolution or a Civil War, or however you would want to characterize being thrown back in a state of nature. These are the things that we consider to be the most important lines in the sand, but they're not everything, okay? That's the first point I want to make about that. But the second thing that is, besides a teaching tool, is it is a clear statement that, look, these are the things that we can agree upon. And once again, it's that common ground in our own history and in our own Bill of Rights. That's the one thing that all Americans share. No American should ever be in favor of another American being black-bagged in the middle of the night and denied the right to indictment and jury trial and to confront their accuser. Who could argue against that? But as Commander Gillie so ably pointed out, in times of fear, people will succumb to the temptation to get at the devil himself, be it a Muslim terrorist or a homegrown terrorist. They'll succumb to the temptation to want to tear down the laws and empower the president to go get that guy. When it was George Bush, many people, sad to say, who call themselves conservatives, were apathetic and even supported him having extraordinary powers and claiming extraordinary powers, which he did. Very unconstitutional powers, he claimed. But now that those exact same claims of power are in the hands of Obama, now their eyes are opened to the danger. And too late. The devil's turned around upon you. But what you can do is you can get back to the bedrock of Americanism, which is understanding where our rights come from. Where do our rights come from? God. That's right. Not from government. Government is your creation, your creature. You got to get back to that bedrock understanding. And my goal with Oath Keepers, hopefully, is to get more Americans to be consistent. I don't care who's in power. It shouldn't make a difference to you what little letters behind their name. What counts is whether or not they're faithful to their oath, whether or not they're constitutionalists, as I said earlier. That's the criteria. This is an association of constitutionalists, period. If you're not a constitutionalist, if you're my party right or wrong, there's the door. I don't want you in this organization if you're going to let your party abuse the Constitution and only complain when the other party does it. Too much of that has gone on over many decades. Lesser of two evils, a shell game. And I'll tell you what, it is more likely to be, I think it's more accurate to say, it's two puppets, a left-hand puppet and a right-hand puppet with the same master, the same ideology of destruction of the Constitution and the erecting above it something that is not legitimate, that is not by our consent. Our forefathers rebelled against the concept of a government that could claim all powers over us. I'll read you one quick passage from Thomas Paine in The Crisis, which he wrote December 23rd, 1776. This is where he said the famous words, "These are times that tries men's souls." But below that, and perhaps more important, he said, Britain, with an army to enforce her tyranny, has declared that she has a right not only to tax, but to bind us in all cases whatsoever. And if being bound in that manner is not slavery, then there is no such thing as slavery upon the earth. Even the expression is impious, for so unlimited a power can belong only to God. Now, does that sound familiar to you? When Nancy Pelosi was asked where in the Constitution there's authority to regulate all of our health care, what was her response? Are you serious? To her, there's no such thing, and to all of Congress, and unfortunately to all the federal courts, for that matter, there's no such thing as a part of your life or any subject that cannot be regulated by Congress. It claims the power to regulate you and bind you upon threat of being imprisoned in all cases whatsoever, from the most minute details of your life on up. That's the claim. That's where we are right now. We're in their shoes. How do we get out of it? Well, like I said, the first thing, that's the last thing you do. The first thing you do is recognize that it could be done by either party and has been done. And you need to look at yourself in the mirror and recognize if you've ever supported someone who has violated their oath. And you need to renew your oath, whatever your transgressions in the past, by voting for an oath breaker because you were afraid of the other side and you're afraid of the devil over there and voted for the lesser of two evils. Whenever you've done that in your life, forgive yourself for doing so, but then now renew your oath. And part of the keeping that oath is to not ever do that again. You cannot vote for or support for office oath breaker. If you do that, you're violating your own oath. Who here disagrees with that? You must only vote for people who are going to be sincere keepers of their oath. Can honest men disagree on what the Constitution requires? Yes. Commander Gillie and I, no doubt, we went through the entire Constitution. We might find a point or two upon which we might disagree about what it requires. I worked for Congressman Ron Paul. I agree with him about 98% of the time. Did I agree with him on everything? No. There were a few minor points of time when we disagreed. And I said, I don't think that's constitutional. And he said, well, I think it is. But I'll tell you what, by and large, it's not that hard to understand. If you know your history and you read the text, it's pretty simple. So the point is not that you always have agreement, but that you be sincere, devoted students to the Constitution and sincere and obedient servants to it. If you do that, if you have that kind of sincerity, that's what a constitutionalist is. You can forgive and deal with disagreements among honest people with goodwill and an honest devotion to the Constitution. Is that what we have now in our state houses or in D.C.? Are these people of goodwill and integrity and courage and honor? No, they're not. How do you stop that? You have to stop voting for them. Stop voting for them. Don't think to yourself, I must vote for this lying, cheating, dishonorable oath breaker, because that lying, cheating, dishonorable oath breaker is even worse. You have to stop doing that. Only support for